Thank you. I'm personally delighted and actually more than pleased that this year the Berlin Foreign Policy Forum hosts a special edition of DW's flagship political interview show, Conflict Zone. It's really a great pleasure to have you here with us, with presenter Sebastian, as well as our guest of today, Saeb, Erekat, Chief Palestinian Negotiator and Secretary General of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. I would like to take this opportunity to extend a very warm thank you to Monika Martin, to Katharina Kroll for supporting this cooperation, and to all the colleagues who have made this cooperation in this setting today possible, to welcome Conflict Zone at the Berlin Foreign Policy Forum. Enter the conflict zone, what has gone wrong, and how can the political deadlock with Israel be overcome? These are only two of the topics that you're going to discuss in the following 45 minutes with us. Sebastian, Mr. Erekat, please, the floor is yours.
All right. 10 seconds. Yeah, 10 seconds, and then we'll go on. Okay. Saeb Erekat, welcome to Conflict Zone.
Good to see you, Tim.
You're a reluctant peace negotiator these days. How many times have you tried to resign the post? You said a few years ago 8 times, but it's probably more now, isn't it?
I don't have a job since 2014. I'm jobless since Netanyahu stopped the negotiations. So I've been busy with my health.
But the Palestinians are closing doors as well, aren't they?
Well,
closing doors with the Americans?
Well, nobody benefits more from opening doors with the Americans than Palestinians, and nobody loses more in closing doors than Palestinians.
Well, that's why President Abbas told Donald Trump, damn your money and may your house be destroyed.
No, that's President Abbas and myself met with President Trump and his team in 2017 37 times. I think we hold the records.
And then you came out with that.
And then, all of a sudden, President Trump decided to take unilateral dictation steps rather than negotiations. He declared Jerusalem as Israel's capital, moved the embassy to Jerusalem. Then
he didn't say it couldn't be your capital as well, did he? He didn't say that.
What did he say? What did he say, Tim?
Do you remember what he said?
Of course I remember what he said. I was in the White House 30th of November, meeting with Jared Kushner and Jason Greenblatt, planning for my president to come and meet President Trump on December 5th.
He said he was not ruling out Jerusalem as part of your capital as well.
I'm going to tell you facts.
Please.
I tell Mr. Kushner tomorrow, 30th of December, 30th of November, 1st of December, you're supposed to sign on not moving the embassy. And he said to me, no, we're not going to do it. I said, then my president's trip is canceled. You want to meet my president on the 5th and declare it on the 6th? So you make him look like he's colluding with you? He said, you can't do that. I said, I can do that. And if you do this, if you recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, you would have disqualified yourself from any role in the peace process.
Erekat, the fact remains you can't get on with this administration. You're not going to work it. You said they're not honest brokers. You've said that. You've accused them of not being honest brokers. Over the years, you've worked with many US administrations who were much better disposed towards you, and you couldn't do a deal with them either. So you keep on waiting for someone better to come into the White House?
Well, you can say this, and you can say that as Palestinians, I have recognized the state of Israel's right to exist and live in peace and security next to the state of Palestine on the 67 lines. I did that. I accepted resolutions 242 and 338. My president accepted no violence, only through negotiations. And having done all of this, I'm asking my Israeli colleagues, and General Dickel Udi just was speaking now, if we don't help ourselves as Israelis and Palestinians, nobody else will help us. Decisions are required from me and the Israelis. Americans, British, Germans cannot make peace with me.
So at some point you've got to sit down with the Americans.
Well, I sat with the Americans.
Yeah, there's no peace process now taking place.
What shall I sit with them to do? 37 meetings. They refused to say 2 states on 67. They moved their embassy. They closed their consulate, which they established in 1844 in
So what are you
Jerusalem.
telling me? You're out of ideas.
No, I'm not.
You're out of
no,
ideas.
no, no, look,
You've got nothing to
I'm
offer.
going to recline my. I'm going to recline.
Okay, so answer me this
I'm
question.
going to recline.
What is your
let me
next
finish.
move?
Let
What's
me
your
finish.
next move?
To recline my feet, okay? Because I've done everything humanly possible to make peace.
Nobody
I'm there.
ever does everything.
I'm
Nobody
there.
ever does
I'm
everything.
there. Now look, Tim, from the River Jordan, my hometown, Jericho, which you know, to the Mediterranean, 50.9% are me, the Christian and Muslim Palestinians, and 49.1% are them. And General Dickel said today that the only option is the two-state solution.
I'm asking you what
And I
your
say that's
next
the only
move is, Saeb Erekat.
My next
You're not
move-
talking to anybody.
No,
You say there's no point talking to anybody.
No, I'm not saying I'm not talking to anybody. I'm talking to you, talking to the Europeans, I'm talking to the Russians. Look, we went as
And
far.
you can't get a deal without the Americans.
No, look,
and you know that.
Where
you
are
know
the,
that.
Where are the Americans?
You know you someday
You know what
will
that-
have to sit down with them. Someday.
I did not stop meeting with
Someday
them.
you will have
I
to
did
sit
not
down.
stop meeting with them.
You said, damn your money and may your house be destroyed. That didn't endear you to them, did it?
Because they, once Theodore Roosevelt said that the White House is an office of international morality, and he's right. And this White House requires giant statesmen, not real estate agents. They think by twisting my arm, by blackmailing me, by cutting $844 million aid to me, including hospitals in East Jerusalem, the only cancer center, eye center, the French hospital, by cutting $230 million of these poor Palestinians and $304 million from United Nations relief and work agencies, they think I can. It's a real estate deal to sell Jerusalem? Of course not. Superpowers, look.
Let me ask you
Just
this.
let me say one sentence.
Please.
Throughout history, we've seen powers and superpowers come and go. Anyone who puts his ideology, conviction, belief above his thoughts will doom us and him. And President Trump, look, I have 612 pages of minutes. When I summarize them, I'm not only worried about Palestinians and Israelis. I'm worried about you in Europe.
It's fine.
I'm worried about Latin America. I'm worried about Africa. I'm worried about the Spanish waking up one morning, finding out Barcelona, the capital of Catalonia, because the price is right, or the Kuril Islands.
Sooner or later, Saeb Erekat, you have to talk to him. You've been heavily criticized for what some people have called a scattergun approach, both to diplomacy and decision-making. The Palestinian academics, Hussein Agha and Ahmed Khalidi from Oxford University, they referred last year to what they said was a series of seemingly inconsistent and poorly thought-out diplomatic moves. That's your territory. Like what they call the unconvincing threats to dismantle the Palestinian Authority. How many times has that been threatened? Many times, never happened.
Look, I'm so happy.
The pursuit of desperate and futile initiatives, such as the French proposal in 2016 for an international peace conference. You're still calling for an international peace conference under the UN auspices. It's not going to happen, is it? You know that.
I'm so happy that you're quoting my colleagues, Agha, Khaldi, because, Palestinians don't need to see with the eyes of Abu Mazen or Saeb Erekat or listen through our ears and speak through our tongues. You know that you can say anything about us. We're a full democracy.
Really? We'll come on to that in a minute. We'll come on to that a bit later.
We're human beings. We're just
we'll come on to your crackdown on free speech a bit later.
We make mistakes.
When you talk about democracy.
We make mistakes, but let me finish my point about the other point before you get me into the other one. All right? What I'm telling you, no one benefits more from reaching peace more than Palestinians, and no one stands to lose more in the absence of peace more than Palestinians.
If that were true, Saeb Erekat, why don't you end your factional divisions, because they are killing your chance of peace?
I agree with you. This is on me.
Yeah, it's on you.
I agree with you.
And you don't do it year after year after year, the same factional divisions with Hamas, with the other Palestinian factions. You can't do it. You can't put aside your factional interests for the sake of the Palestinian people.
We have 26 Palestinian political parties, and our only request...
Is that an excuse?
Look, Hamas is a Palestinian political party. I'm not trying to exclude them. All I'm telling them, Tim, we differ. But once we differ, it's ballots and not bullets. And they have to understand that I cannot have a Palestinian state without having one authority, one gun, and the rule of law.
Yes, everybody tells you that, but
nobody
year
tells me this. This is for me.
Year you
this is
fail
for me.
To do it.
No, I'm not failing to do it. They have taken over Gaza by arms, a coup d'etat. They're dictating themselves, and all we're telling. Yesterday we were in Cairo, asking to implement the agreement we signed with them in 2017. And what does the agreement specify? that the national consensus government we formed with them, with Hamas, shoulder its responsibilities equally in the West Bank and Gaza, and we go to ballots.
So,
What's wrong with that?
They blame you, and you blame them.
I'm not blaming them.
And it doesn't go forward.
I'm saying facts.
It doesn't go forward, does it?
Look,
You're not giving me a plan to take this forward and end those factional divisions.
I'm putting a plan to them. They are part of the Palestinian society. I cannot exclude them. They cannot exclude me. We differ. We go to ballots and not bullets. When Haniya came to present his cabinet, and I think you were there, to the parliament, our parliament, I was speaking on behalf of the loyal opposition. I said to him, Mr. Haniya, today you are no longer a prime minister of Hamas. You are my prime minister. Act as such.
Well, that didn't
Shoulder
work,
the responsibilities.
It didn't work.
So what can I do?
It didn't work.
What can I do?
Well, your president goes before the United Nations Security Council and he says, I beg of you, help us. You've got to help yourselves.
We're trying to help.
You have to sort out these factional disputes yourself. And it's not just Hamas, is it? It's not just Hamas. Last month's meeting of your Central Council, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, they weren't there. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, they weren't there either. They didn't turn up, they said, because you are stalling and procrastinating about decisions.
That's not true.
That was their accusation.
Look, I'm the Secretary General.
Face facts, the movement is falling apart. Your Palestinian movement is falling apart.
I am the Secretary General of the PLO. The Democratic Front attends all PLO Executive Committee meetings till yesterday. They decided not to come to the Central Council. That's their decision. I cannot stand guards on their lips. I cannot stand guards on their actions. As I told you, we are a full democracy. The reasons they boycotted, you can ask them why they boycott. Failure of the Palestinian national movement is just a hallucination, Tim. And please stop hallucinating. I have 7 grandchildren, and believe me, they'll be much more nationalist and much more unified than me and your generation.
Look at the latest polling in September. Palestinian polling, 62% want your president to resign. 67% are dissatisfied with the performance of the Palestinian Authority. 3/4 view conditions today as worse than before the Oslo Agreement.
They are.
So what have you achieved for your people? What have you achieved
for your
people?
If my president wants to go to Amman, he seeks a permission from the Israeli commander.
You don't answer. What have you achieved
we're under
for your people?
occupation.
Saeb Erekat, what have you achieved?
Look what we achieved.
What?
Look at the World Bank.
Worse conditions.
No. Look at the World Bank report and the International Monetary Fund report, 2014, 15, 16, 17. We have done, we're a very young authority. We're crawling, 20 years old. We have done in these 20 years more than any country in the third world did in 63 years. That's the truth. In terms of building institutions,
and your people have had enough of it.
Human rights. Look, they have the right.
Have had enough
they have the right. This is why we want to go to elections. I did not come, and President Abbas did not come to be the president by a tank or by heredity. He came through elections. He won by 61% of the votes. I won by 57% of the votes, not 99%. That's the fact. And President Abbas,
13 years into a 4-year term.
He said he wants to go to elections, and he declared he's not going to run.
Well, when are you having elections?
When we
you
have,
keep saying.
No, if we have elections without Gaza, what will you say to them? We're separating. You think we can have a state without Gaza?
So why do you keep calling for elections? You promised elections this year.
I need elections to unify my people.
You personally promised elections this year.
That's what I did, and I'm doing it now. And I'm urging the Egyptians. The Egyptians are doing a fantastic job now. President Abbas was with President Sisi 10 days ago, and he told him, Mr. President, you specify the steps in accordance with the timelines, and I'm willing to go along with it as long as we reach the ballots and not the bullets.
And you say you can't have elections until you're unified. Whatever strategy you thought you were employing to make things better for your people, it's not working, is it? And in Gaza, you've actually been helping to cause hardship. You asked Israel to cut electricity to Gaza.
That's not true.
Because of a row with Hamas over payments.
That's not true.
You didn't ask them?
That's not true.
You did.
Look, I have. No, I have an overloaded wagon of complexities. All right? You know why Netanyahu cut the negotiations with me on 23rd of April 2014? Because we signed the Shatta agreement with Hamas. And he said to me that evening, you choose peace between me or you and Hamas. And he suspended the negotiations ever since. I have an overloaded wagon of complexities. I'm 20 years old. I commit mistakes. I'm not saying I don't commit, but I don't wake up in the morning and say today I'm going to commit the following mistakes.
You're squeezing of Gaza.
I'm under occupation. I have $196 million monthly income after the Americans cut 844.
Erekat.
I pay to Gaza, Mahmoud Abbas, my president, pays to Gaza monthly $96 million and spend $100 million in the West Bank.
Erekat.
That's my capabilities.
Okay, your action has put hospital operations at risk in Gaza, water pumps, the sewage system, huge
My
health risks.
actions?
You squeeze them.
Well, how can I squeeze them? I'm paying $96 million, half of my budget, 50%. What can I do? I pay the electricity for Israel, the water for Israel, and then they collect, Hamas collects, and they don't put it back in the finance ministry.
And when people protested in the streets in June about your action, you arrested dozens of them, and your security forces beat them up in custody. And you tell me how democratic you are.
Well, look, if you want me to be perfect, I'm not perfect. If you
This
want
is
to tell me-
very far
Listen,
from
look,
being
look,
perfect,
look,
isn't it?
Look,
This is government policy. You beat them up consistently.
You mentioned one demonstration. It's true. Some people were beaten up. That's right. But then an investigation committee was formed the day after by President Abbas. An ongoing investigation had went. But how many demonstrations do I have on a daily basis in the West Bank? Against Abu Mazen, against myself? How many? Every single day. There is only one place in the Arab world where the Palestinian president is criticized on Palestinian TV, Palestinian newspapers, Palestinian. You said parties don't come and boycott and attack us. Look at every website. And then you're telling me that I am not, exploiting human rights.
And you say nobody's perfect. And you say nobody's perfect.
No.
That's not an excuse. What about the corruption? The massive corruption in
Which
the
massive
Palestinian
corruption?
Authority? Well, the latest polling in September shows that more than 80% believe that there is widespread corruption in the Palestinian Authority. They cite nepotism, bribery, abuse of public funds, and lack of transparency. You know, your own independent watchdog, Amman, the Coalition for Accountability and Integrity, has issued yet another blistering report about you for the year 2017, saying that there is a lack of transparency. It said the continued dysfunction of the Palestinian Legislative Council allows the government to escape accountability.
Number one, we have the anti-corruption.
And you asked me
Council.
what corruption is in Palestinian territories.
Trying to answer. Do we have corruption? Yes. Last year, 4 Palestinian ministers were in front of the court of corruption. I think it's the only time in history of Arab and Islamic countries. But to go and to exaggerate this much, that's too much. A man has the right to review everything, to ask everything. Every single member, including me, every year have to renew exactly what's our income, where do we live, where do we come, and so on. And those who commit acts of corruption are put in front of a court, right? That happens in Palestine.
Really?
Yes.
In 2015, your former minister in the Palestinian Authority, Shawki al-Issa, resigned over corruption. Last year, he said it was not permitted to carry out any useful action to reduce corruption. Non-corrupt officials, he said, were removed. Those suspected of corruption had their positions strengthened.
I know
That's some kind of accolade.
I know Shawki al-Issa. He's been in the opposition and the good opposition, and he has the right to say whatever he wants. But any
telling me is wrong.
Any case of
telling
corruption.
me
No,
is
no, I'm telling you the following. Any case of corruption, any Palestinian who claims from President Abbas down, he has the right to go to a court in the corruption and submit his case. All right?
What about the case of Palestinian Airlines? This was singled out
What-
by Amman. It said the Treasury last year continued payment of hundreds of salaries to employees in Palestinian Airlines. There is, of course, no Palestinian Airlines. It has hundreds of salaries have been paid. According to Amman, there is no Palestinian Airlines. The company is not registered in accordance with the law. There is no center of responsibility. How do you explain these hundreds of salaries when you have an airline that has flown, what, 2 years out of the last 13?
Our 4 planes were destroyed by the Israelis, and we have people who were working there.
Hundreds of salaries.
Not hundreds.
It's a big fraud, Saeb
Just a second.
Isn't it?
Just a second. We have a pension system. When you work for as many years, I think 25 years.
They've flown for 2 years out of 13.
They were before.
They've flown for 2 years.
They were before. They were
2005 to
they were
2012, they
working
didn't fly.
Before we had something called the President Arafat plane. We have pilots, we have people who maintain the planes. It was an Algerian plane.
Hundreds of salaries.
Not hundreds, not hundreds.
You're telling me Amman got it wrong?
Yeah, of course. They get
You know
it
this
wrong.
case intimately,
Listen,
do you?
Look, I know that every case I know very intimately. And
So where's the money going then?
The
Who's
money,
pocketing the money?
nobody pockets any
Really?
money.
Tell that to Amman.
Yes, I'm telling that to Amman. And we review this with Amman. And by the way, Amman comes and submits the report to President Mahmoud Abbas. And if this is the case that you worry about, that the problem in Palestine is my corruption, my undemocratic, and this is why I'm under occupation, and this is why I cannot qualify Hamas, and this, and this, and this is your problem?
Let's get on to the real problem.
Let's get to the real problem, exactly.
Which is the human rights abuses. Human Rights Watch, which you've dealt with for many years, has just produced its latest report, compiled over 2 years, which features credible reports of shocking human rights abuses by your security services. Your abuses
How many
include,
cases the human rights specified?
They based their investigation on 147 interviews, as you know well.
In 2 years, yeah.
As you know well.
Yes.
Shocking abuse.
Yes.
They say that there are violations of international humanitarian law and contravene the legal obligations that you took when you signed up to human rights treaties over the last 5 years. Torture, extensively documented, may amount to a crime against humanity. And you're telling me you're a democratic state.
We are.
And you allow torture on a daily basis.
No, we are. We are a democratic
You allow torture
state.
on a daily basis.
Look.
I have raised these issues with you for decades.
Can I
for at
answer?
least 25 years.
Can I answer? Look, the Human Rights Watch is a respected organization. By the way, in the newly elected executive committee of the PLO, we formed a department for human rights. We took the report very seriously. The next morning, the Prime Minister, myself, the Minister of Interior, the Deputy, we met and issued a statement taking into account to study every single word in this report and formed a committee to investigate every single matter. Right?
You say this every time.
I'm not saying this.
You've given me exactly the same
I'm
answer over
acting
years.
on this.
No.
And if you think one day you will wake up and you find Palestinians are void of mistakes, we're not
I
going to give
got the same answers from you 10, 15, 20
you
years
get the
ago.
answer.
I got exactly the same answers.
answer from me. You know, Tim.
This is the problem with growing old. You remember a few things, you know.
The point is, you know me very well, Tim. And that you know.
And I know you've made excuses for this behavior year after year after year.
Look, I don't have any on saying stupid in front of you, in my forehead. So every word I say, I know it's recorded, I know it's going to be on TV. I'm the only session that's going to be televised tomorrow. So I'm responsible for every single word, and you know my credibility.
You live in Jericho,
I live in Jericho, in the house I was born in, because I refuse even to rent an apartment at the expense of the Palestinians.
You live in Jericho. In the West Bank, some of the harshest treatment reported by detainees takes place in Jericho at the Joint Security Committee Detention Center.
Joint Security Committee with whom?
This is Human Rights Watch reporting. The Joint Security Committee Detention Center. Officers force prisoners into painful stress positions, long stints in solitary confinement. A young man from the Balata refugee camp said he was twice subjected to electric shocks and once had a cord tied around his genitals. So much for signing the Convention Against Torture.
We are members of the Convention Against Torture.
And you abuse it, and you violate it on a regular basis.
As I told you, the 147 cases for 2 years, 24 months are being investigated, and each single one, people who have committed these atrocities will be held accountable. That's my promise.
How many people have been held accountable?
Look,
how many? How many?
Many.
How many? You can't tell me, can you?
Governors.
3, 5,
no, wait a minute,
7,
wait a minute. I cannot tell you numbers, but I can tell you that security officials in certain areas were sacked, fired. They were demoted.
How many?
Governors.
How many?
I really cannot, as I told you, my
It doesn't mean
means so
anything
much
unless
to me.
you have a number.
I will get you the number. I don't have it with me now, but many.
You're also cracking down on freedom of speech as well.
How?
January last year, your security forces detained Faris Jabbour, a student from Hebron, about his participation in a book event organized by the Islamic group at his university. He'd already been arrested 5 times on charges that turned out to be false. You go after these people again and again and again. He was taken on one occasion to the Jericho detention center where officers alternated between kicking and hitting him with a stick. You're smiling.
I'm
This
smiling
is nothing
because
to smile about.
No,
is it?
because I live in Jericho. And Nami, my
this is
wife,
happening under your nose.
Nami
Under
knows.
your nose.
People come at knock on my door at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning and wake me up and tell me our son is there and our daughter is there and so on. And I go with them.
So you know it's going on.
Of course. And then
You
I
know
go
it's
and
going on.
interfere and stop it on behalf of the president
And you
the
tell
prime
me how
minister.
democratic you are.
We
At
are.
the same time as you
That's
know
why,
this
that's
is
why,
going
that's why
on.
when it happens, we stop it. We admit it. We don't hide it. We don't find excuses. We don't buy people. People have their own lips and ears and eyes. But if you want me to be the perfect model for you, I'm not perfect.
Aren't you ashamed of all this that's been going on?
In some cases, I'm ashamed, yes.
Is
I'm
this what
ashamed.
it-
You know, sometimes I can't because I'm a young authority. I'm 23 years old. I cannot differentiate between freedom of expression and incitement. Sometimes I cannot. I have to tell Palestinians, please don't smear, don't talk about people because of their religion, because of their color, because of their belongings, because of their affiliation. So sometimes we have people who attack others for their religion and so on, and I'm ashamed of it.
Is this what a future Palestinian state would look like?
The future Palestinian state would look like
Human rights abuses,
the discussion
corruption,
that's going on now.
crackdown on free speech,
No.
internet controls.
The future of the Palestinian state will be the future of democracy, human rights, women's rights, accountability, transparency, and the rule of law. This is my
So
promise.
very different from what you have now.
No, it's that, you know.
Very different.
You mentioned we're 6 million people in the West Bank and Gaza. You mentioned 147 cases in 2 years, which is too much. We're dealing with each one of them separately, giving them our attention.
Okay.
That's what we promised. And we hope that this number will be reduced and reduced and
All right.
reduced.
We have to leave it there. Saeb Erekat, thanks very much indeed.
All right,
Thank you.
It's for me.
For you. Hold on. We're going to take, if only I could read sign language. We're going to take a question, I think, first of all, from one of our viewers, my colleague, Thomas Sparrow. You have a question?
The question we received is, to what extent is the Palestinian Authority capable of protecting the Palestinian land and the people in the West Bank? We see killing, demolition of houses, confiscation of land, and daily arrests.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, I had to go through a lung transplant last year. And in my recent meeting with Palestinian youth, one of them, I think he's going to have a very good future, university student from Bir Zayed, stood up and told me to shut up. And next time I should do a tongue transplant, not a lung transplant, simply because I'm speaking about the two-state solution, peace, non-violence, negotiations. At the same time, the Israelis have mass executions, peaceful demonstrators, confiscation of land, building more settlements, 40%, by the way, increase since 2010. They're demolishing total neighborhoods like Khan al-Ahmar. They detained the governor of Jerusalem. And all these, I'm asking myself, this is the occupying power. Mr. Netanyahu is trying to destroy me, to take my credibility away from me, but I cannot shoot myself in the foot. Tim said that many times we said, this situation is not sustainable. I never spoke about dissolving the authority. I said that the current situation is not sustainable. Netanyahu is destroying the two-state solution because he wants to replace it with one state, two systems. That's apartheid. Those Palestinians who speak to me to shut up want one state, equal rights, which is not doable to the Israelis. So in the absence of two states, which is, in my opinion, the only option for the state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as capital to live side by side the state of Israel in peace and security on the 1967 lines. This is my personal conviction. I never did a job I'm doing it for my own. I don't want my sons and grandchildren to be suicide bombers. I want to maintain hope in the minds of Palestinians and Israelis. And my job is to save lives of Israelis and Palestinians. And by the way, I want to say something very, very important. Judaism, to me, as a Palestinian, was never a threat, is not a threat, will never be a threat. I have a territorial conflict, a national conflict, and this conflict should not be turned into a religious one by the Friedmans and the Greenblatts and others, because that's a very dangerous zone. That's the conflict zone. Since my prophet, God bless him, Muhammad, died, we had 803 movements in political Islam. ISIS is number 803. These are thugs and criminals and murderers who go to mosques to use God, and we have been cowards as Arabs, as Muslims, not to stand tall and confront them. The real threat on us as Arabs today is not this country or that country. The real threat is demography. 62% of us are less than 19 years of age. They need houses, husbands, wives, jobs. And we cannot compete with this thug called Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. This is why Arabs need to revisit their economic structure, cultural structure, educational structure, and we need democracy in the Arab world. And anyone who says Arabs are not ready for democracy is a racist.
All right. We're going to take some more. Does anybody have a question? If you have a question, would you like to raise a hand?
Mr. Saeb, was Oslo a mistake? Did you pay the price for it? Did you take it so seriously when the Israelis, I heard some Israelis say that they really didn't think you'll take it so seriously. And really, just as a follow-up on one very rare question of Tim Sebastian that related to the relationship with Israel and the United States, what is it that will make you come to the table, move forward with the Americans, and maybe with the Russians now? They're claiming that they want to put you together with the Israelis. Give us a couple of steps forward, please.
Actually, we approached the Russians. I personally met with the National Security Advisor of Russia, with my friend Sergei Vershinian, the envoy, and I took them to see my president, and they suggested that invite my president Abu Mazen and Mr. Netanyahu to Moscow to attend the final World Cup. We accepted, because President Putin wanted to have a trilateral meeting, Abu Mazen himself and Netanyahu. Abu Mazen showed up with President Putin. Netanyahu came 2 days earlier than left before Abu Mazen came. And this is why I wanted to ask, actually, Udi, Mr. Dickel today, why are not we meeting? I asked the Americans in the 37 meetings I had with them, set me up with the Israelis.
Saeb was asking what your next step is.
That's what I'm saying. I need to sit with the Israelis. No, I'm just telling you, if we don't help each other, nobody else will. I'm trying my best now. I'm trying my best, Raghida, now, to re-engage with the Israelis. We have no other option but the two-state solution. Trust me, after 5,700 years of being Jews, they're not thinking about converting to Christianity and Islam and becoming Palestinians. I'm not thinking of converting from Christianity and Islam to Judaism. So what are they going to do with me? They're not stupid.
What do you mean trying to re-engage? The Prime Minister's spokesman says he's ready to meet Abbas at any time.
He's not. Why didn't he go to Moscow to meet with him? I'm challenging him now.
You have his
to
number.
Come to Berlin.
You have his
with
number.
Merkel.
Why don't you call him?
We sent messages. I challenge Mr. Netanyahu officially. He can choose any country on earth. Moscow, Beijing, London, Berlin.
And Abbas will meet him.
We will meet him.
Yeah?
Yes, he will meet him. This is a challenge, a declared challenge, all right? This is not a joke. As I told you, no one benefits more in achieving peace more than Palestinians, and no one stands to lose more in the absence of peace more than it's the life of my children and grandchildren. I don't want them to be desperate. I need to keep the hope alive in the minds of Israelis and Palestinians, because desperation would mean desperate acts. And desperate act means blood of Palestinians and Israelis. And it's not a job what I'm doing. It's a way of life.
Any other questions?
On the Americans, We asked the Americans to look at the website of the White House, January 27th, 2017, and to read what was written there, and we will go and meet with them. What was written there, that the annexation of East Jerusalem is null and void, the two-state solution 6-7 with mutually agreed swaps, core issues including Jerusalem must be negotiated without any side taking any steps that may preempt or prejudge these issues, and forced settlements are illegal and obstacle to peace. This group, this team of President Trump refused to say two states. They think settlements should be legalized and they'll be annexed. And they're telling everyone in this room, Europeans, Arabs, Asians, Africans, Latins, Russians, Chinese, Japanese, we're preparing the deal of the century. I challenge any of you if he had seen a single word by the Americans. So Britain, I ask Europe, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? You said two states, you invented it in 1980 Venice Declaration. And when you say two states, you recognize the two states, not the one state. And nobody is willing. The British Parliament vote for recognizing Palestine. The Spanish, the Belgium, Sweden recognized us. They acted they acted tall, because that gave me a line of life, hope. So the thing is, those who want two states, they should recognize the two states. They should recognize the state of Palestine. And those who think that settlements are illegal, settlements are war crimes. And it's a shameful thing for European companies. It was a European company that demolished 17 homes in Shafat refugee camps the day before yesterday. That's shameful. That's against your laws in Europe. You should stand tall against settlement and settlement activities. This is an obstacle.
To be fair, the European Union does. Over and over again, it condemns demolitions carried out
we
by
appreciate
Israel.
very much the second geographic location to pay with the blood of its sons and daughters at the hands of those murderers and criminals called ISIS are the Europeans, are you, after me, after the Arabs. All right? I'm not European. I'm never going to ask to be European. I'm a proud Arab, okay? But geopolitics, your interests. The Arab, for solving the Palestinian-Israeli question, is the ticket to defeat extremism. I told President Trump once, asked him one question. Sir, did you develop the techniques to kill ideas with bullets? Did you develop the techniques to prevent ideas to travel with or without visas? Because these are the only things that travel without visas. Ideas, bad ones. And bad ideas need better ideas. You defeat ISIS not by bullets. Two things are required. End the Israeli occupation, establish a Palestinian state to live in peace and security with Israel, and democracy in the Arab world, because we're sick and tired of you. Saddam Hussein is a good dictator when he wages a war against Iran, then he becomes a bad dictator when he invades Kuwait. Gaddafi is Mother Teresa when he accepts that investments, and then you kill him. This must stop. And to be fair and honest, Western Arab relations have not been defined since a small Muslim army sieged the city of Vienna. And it's time to define these relations and the values of human rights, women's rights, accountability, transparency, and the rule of law. And when I commit mistake, I come to you in Europe, asking you to help me in building my judicial system, educational system, because I don't need to wait another 60 years to learn what we have done.
5.6 billion euros has gone into the Palestinian Authority.
Look at the institutions.
5.6 billion.
Look at the institutions that we have. You know, in my hometown, Jericho, kids before I became a minister in the first government, local government, went to schools in 3 shifts a day. 3 shifts a day, all over the cities of Palestine and Gaza. Today, we go to hospitals at the end of each year to know how many children were born in each constituency and town, so we know how many classrooms we add in 5 years when they go to school. We have 1 shift. Hospitals, state of the art, roads, water. Thank you. Thank you for your help. You know, when I became the first head of the election commission, I was appointed by President Arafat in Tunis. I flew to Europe, to Brussels. I signed an agreement with the EU. I told them, look, we've never done elections. We don't have constituencies. We don't have voters lists. We don't have registrations. I need your expertise. They gave me an agreement with Spanish, British, and I think Belgium experts who worked with me and helped me all the way. In my hometown, Jericho, last year, we had 4 American generals, Italians, French, Canadians, helping training our security forces and the rule of law and everything that's done. We're open. We need you. We need the help of the world to build our institutions. But as far as us and the Israelis are concerned, if we don't help ourselves, nobody else will. Decisions are required from me and from OD, from Israelis, not from you, not from Americans, not from Canadians. We need third parties to help us.
We have time for one more question. Lady there.
Hi, I'm Stuart from the Washington Post. Actually, Mr. Erekat, it's interesting to hear that you mentioned Moscow, you're asking all kinds of countries for help and support, but you didn't mention Riyadh, you didn't mention all the other Arab countries who used to be strong supporters, and I'm wondering what's the reason for that? How is your relationship with all those countries, and do you feel you're still getting the same kind of support, or do you feel that maybe you're going to miss the train, that they in fact will establish stronger relations with the Israelis while you're still waiting to cut some kind of deal?
I was told by Mr. Kushner on 30th of November, when I told him that you would have disqualified yourself if you recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. He said to me, you don't understand the changes going on around you. So I told him, I'm a good student, teach me. Don't be sarcastic, he shouted. I said, don't allow me to be sarcastic. What's changing around me? Saudi Arabia, April 15th, 2018, the King of Saudi Arabia, King Salman bin Abdulaziz, declared the Arab Summit's name the Jerusalem Summit. And the statement read his denunciation and condemnation of President Trump's decision to move the embassy, two-state solution in 1967, the Arab Peace Initiative, the Saudi communique said will not change. And this was voted unanimously by all Arab countries. Look, as Arabs, we are 22 countries, Saad. We have 19 conflicts within and between Arab countries. But that day in Riyadh, not a single Arab country took a different position. That's the Egyptian position that was conveyed by President Sisi, Saudis, Jordanians. The King of Jordan told Pence in a press conference, open press conference, what you're doing is destabilizing the whole region. The Emiratis, the Qataris, the Omanis, the Algerians, the Moroccans. You may have differences between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. We have Algeria, Morocco. You have Somalia. You have many problems in the Arab world. But what changed? What changed? This Netanyahu hallucination about, saying that Arabs having Arab Rosh Mawad. I challenge him to see an Arab embassy open in Tel Aviv, or opening an embassy for him in any Arab country, except for the two countries that have treaties, Jordan and Egypt. I recognize Israel. The PLO. We're not against Israel's existence. We want to live and let live, and we're telling the Israelis this is the only option for us. And Mr. Netanyahu is saying no. 2 states is not an option. It's 1 state, 2 systems. Apartheid. I still go with this ID card issued by the Israelis. It's green. The ones that Udi has is blue. And he drives a car with a license that's yellow. They make me drive a car with a license plate that's white and green. And there are roads in the West Bank today I cannot use as a Palestinian. And such diseases as bigotry and racism, once they inflict underneath our skins as humans. I don't know why. We have a tendency to justify it. Sometimes we offer sociological, psychological, economic, sexual, and now Israel is saying security reasons. Apartheid. That's not doable. That's not workable. That's not sustainable. And what's the difference between a thug and a murderer who slit the throat of a Western journalist in Syria and Iraq under the name ISIS, and between a thug and a murderer who burns the Dawabshi family in Douma, an 18-month toddler, Ahmed, 5 years old, and a mother and a father, simply because they're Palestinians? It's the culture It's when people put their ideologies above their ideas and for their way of thinking that we're doomed to the situation. And
if follow up.
So it seems everything is okay with Saudi Arabia.
I'm telling you officially, I'm announcing it on behalf of Saudi Arabia, on behalf of Egypt, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, Qatar, and every Arab country in Northern Africa. No one will change a single word in the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002 Beirut Summit that specified that once Israel completes its withdrawal from occupied Arab territories, including the Golan and the remaining parts of Lebanon, there will be normalization. And
Yeah,
before that,
you called on them in the Palestinian Central Council, you called on all the Arab states to sever ties with Israel until it respects the 2002
I drafted
and
this.
they ignored it.
No.
And all the Arab states ignored it.
No.
They did.
I drafted the statement. We said that as
It
Arabs,
says it in black and white.
we are reassured by the Arab countries that they will not accept to change the Arab Peace Initiative, and we urge them not to do. And
You asked them to sever ties.
No, we don't. They don't have ties. They don't have ties.
Really? Really?
Shall I give you an example?
Really?
Shall I give you an example?
Where was Netanyahu recently?
He was
in Oman.
And he was in Oman.
First time in 20 years that a Jewish
So what did
leader
he
has
do?
been in Oman.
What did he do with the Omanis?
Warm words.
What did he do with the Omanis? The Sultan of
You
Oman.
don't know what he did with Oman, and I don't know.
No, I know.
You don't know.
I know.
Really?
Because the Sultan of Oman asked my president if he wants to break the deadlock or so on, and said, why? The two-state solution, Arab Peace Initiative. So when he heard Netanyahu, he sent his foreign minister to us, telling us the man doesn't speak about land, doesn't speak about two states and about anything else. So what happened after that? Do you have an embassy for Israel and Oman? It will not happen. That's what the Omani said, openly. The people want to help us in breaking the deadlock with the Israelis. So if you can do, we're asking that. I have asked the Germans to do it. I'm asking the Russians to do it. Russians are members of the Quartet, the Chinese, Japanese, anyone. It's not in our interest to have this stalemate between us and the Israelis.
Okay. I think we have to leave it there. Thank you. Thank you all very much indeed. Saeb, thank you very much. Thank you.
Dear friends, please remain seated for 2 more minutes. Let me first thank Tim, Sebastian, and Saeb Erekat for this very intense and very lively final session of the Berlin Foreign Policy Forum. That was really a highlight. If you want to see it again, the interview will be broadcast tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. UCT or 6:30 p.m. local time. Well, dear friends, the Berlin Foreign Policy Forum is coming to an end, and let me say a few thanks before we adjourn. I would first like to thank the Federal Foreign Office, Ralf Beste and his planning staff, as well as the organizing team for the excellent cooperation. I would like to thank the Pew Research Center, the International Crisis Group, the Stiftung Neue Verantwortung, and our media partners, Der Spiegel, Deutsche Welle, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, Tagesspiegel, and Huffington Post Germany for the good cooperation, and we look forward to continuing working with you in the years to come. I would like to thank all the Körber team that helped in various ways today with the press and social media, the conference desk, and during the breakout sessions. But the greatest thank you goes to the International Affairs team led by Nora Müller, and in particular the core team of the Berlin Foreign Policy Forum and the Berlin Pulse. Jana Fix, Program Director of the Berlin Foreign Policy Forum, Theresa Kirch, Christoph Heilmeier, Leonie Stamm, Santiago Escobar, Anton Beverunge, Barbara Pongratz, Katja Schmidt, Julia Harrer, and Alisa Trojansky. Here they are. Finally, let me say a big thanks to you all for coming, for participating and engaging in our debates and our discussions. We now invite you, as every year, at 7:30 for dinner in the Austernbank. When you leave the building, it's right on the left-hand side. You can't miss it. If you can't make for dinner, I look forward to welcoming you again next year at the Berlin Foreign Policy Forum, which will be the 8th Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.